As Dick said, my name's Ken Ferguson. Is there anyone here who was with Northwest Airlines way back in 30s and 40s and early 50s? I'm Ken Ferguson Jr. My father was in management with Northwest from 1932 to 1953, and left Northwest Airlines, was squeezed out, I think is the correct word, over an airplane called a Martin 202. Maybe some of you remember those airplanes. But yeah, well, the wings fell off, which wasn't a good thing. I went into corporate aviation, and I, through a series of accidents, what are we doing? Okay, you turn that, just stop it there. And then I'll want to have the, oh yeah? Oh sure, lots of sound. I was flying here out of Hibbing for a company that had business all over the continent, and we had a Citation jet and a Beechcraft King Air. And when I was training on the Citation down in Wichita, I met a couple of guys from Southern California, and we kind of hit it off and stayed in touch. And as so happens, often happens in corporate aviation, both of our employers ran onto hard times at about the same time and parked their airplanes, so we were kind of at loose ends. And Kevin got on managing a charter operation in Palm Springs, California, and he called me up one day and asked me if I wanted to come out and fly with him. And winter was coming on, and I didn't have a regular flying job, so it took me about 2.5 seconds to say, yeah. You know, Palm Springs in the winter, that works. That was 1983. We thought we were going to have a big demand because of the Los Angeles Olympics in 1984. So out I went, and there wasn't really enough charter business, as is common, to keep us busy, so we started doing pickup, and I was doing test flights for Schneck Aviation, and we were doing pickup for anybody that would pay us money to fly their airplane, and we would fly anything that it was at least quasi-legal for us to fly. And we got a call one night, 11 o'clock at night. A friend of ours had gotten on with Continental Airlines, and he had been babysitting a North American Rockwell Jet Commander for a doctor who owned it, and when he left, he passed our name on to the owner, our names. And the pilot who had taken over the airplane called us one night at 11 o'clock looking for a pickup co-pilot, and he wanted somebody to be at LAX at 7 in the morning. And we lived out in 1,000 Palms, out in the Coachella Valley, so it was about a 3.5-hour drive to get to LAX, and my partner didn't like getting up in the morning. So I took the trip. I was a little dubious, but I suspected it might be Ricky Nelson because I knew he used that airplane. So I went in, and sure enough it was, and we went to Fort Worth, where we played in a converted slaughterhouse called Billy Bob's Texas. And it's got about 7 bars under one roof. And we played the big auditorium bar there. And through a bunch of happenstances, I got to know most of the guys in the band, but far more importantly, Rick's fiancée, Helen Blair, traveled with us, and I got to know her and seemed to get along with her. And there's that old saying, you know, if you want to get close to the king, get close to the queen. And that's kind of what I did. And so very shortly thereafter, that was second week of February of 1984, and they started using me regularly after that, and we flew the Jet Commander until December of '84, and then for several months we didn't have an airplane, and we just worked California and southern Nevada and things like that just by vehicle. And then Brad, the pilot for Rick, called me in April of '85 and said, we just bought an airplane. We bought a DC-3 that was at Burbank Airport. And I hadn't known anything about it. I was kind of taken aback. You know, we'd been flying Jet Commander, and I was type rated in the citations. And all of a sudden, we're going to be flying a DC-3. So we packed up, and our very first trip, our first leg was LA to Washington, D.C. So that's, it was during that trip that I familiarized myself with the airplane. I had about 13 hours of flight time to horse around and figure out what switch did what and what lever did what and so on. Now I have some video material. I assume that I don't have my usual problem. Pretty much everybody in here, my hand away. Okay. Everybody in here probably has heard of Ricky Nelson, right? Son of Ozzie and Harriet. Anybody who doesn't know who he was? Yeah, among his credits was he co-starred with John Wayne and Dean Martin and Angie Dickinson in Rio Bravo. It was her first major film. And he co-starred with Jack Lemmon in a movie called The Wackiest Ship in the Army. Well, the last time I gave one of these talks, a guy came up to me afterwards. He said, I was in Pearl Harbor when they made that movie. They used my ship for a lot of the scenes in that movie, which was kind of fun. Some people think that Rick only had a few hit songs and wasn't that successful in rock and roll. I don't remember all the figures, but he had 24 gold records. He had 28 top 20 records, 30 some odd top 40 records, and he charted. That means that it got on the hit parade top 100. He charted 100 sides. He was one of only 2 rockers in the 50s to sell 1 million albums. Kids didn't buy albums in the 50s. They bought singles or extended plays. The other person was Elvis Presley. No one else sold 1 million copies of an album in the 1950s. Rick charted albums in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, and that is a record no other rocker ever did that either. The family TV show, Ozzie and Harriet, ran for 14 years on primetime TV from 1952 to 1966, and had run on radio for several years before that, and the boys had been on radio for the last 2 years. So Rick was on the show from 1950 to 1966. And as some of you no doubt know, they used to debut some of his songs on the show. And the first song he performed on the Ozzie and Harriet show was I'm Walking, and it sold 1 million copies in the first week, which is yet another rock and roll record. So people who think that Rick Nelson didn't accomplish much in his career just don't know very much about his career. Anyway, I was, in April, we bought this DC-3 and used it all over the country and into Canada and so on. And on December 31st, 1985, we left Guntersville, Alabama, where we'd been for 5 days, playing at a club that belonged to an old band member of Rick's. And we were en route to Dallas, where we were going to do a New Year's Eve show. And after we'd been in the air for, I'm not sure, a couple hours approximately, we were having problems with the gasoline combustion heater. Are there any mechanics in the audience, in the group here? Familiar with combustion heaters, are you? You like them? I never met anybody who was sane who liked them. They're horrible. And anyway, we had eventually an under-the-floor fire in the airplane that was caused by the combustion heater leaking fuel into the belly of the airplane. And we were en route to Dallas at 6,000 feet on IFR flight plan. I have here on my video material, I have the complete conversation between me and Fort Worth Center. It starts out with just some housekeeping, and then you'll hear me say, Fort Worth, we've got a little problem here. I want to go back to Texarkana. And that was when our drummer, our bass player came out and tapped me on the shoulder. I was alone up front. Brad was in back doing some stuff. And he said, Ferg, we've got some smoke back here. And I turned and looked over my left shoulder, and there was a brown ball of smoke, about like so, way aft by the lavatory in the cabin. And I assumed from, unfortunately, too much experience with those heaters that we'd had what we call a puffback, where it had an explosive ignition and it actually blows smoke into the interior of the airplane. So I shut the heater off, called Fort Worth Center, told them I wanted to go back to Texarkana, which we just passed a few minutes before, and get the thing on the ground where we could take a look at it. And about halfway through the turn, Pat grabbed me and he said, Ferg, we've got a lot of smoke back here. And I looked back and there was just this cloud of thick black smoke rolling up through the cabin. If you've ever seen a car burning on the freeway, that's the kind of smoke I'm talking about. As black as coal and just pouring up through the airplane. Brad came forward and sat down. We had a couple more conversations with Fort Worth, decided we weren't going to make it back to Texarkana. He gave me a thumbs down, and he literally dumped the nose of the airplane. Very shortly thereafter, we had flames coming up through the floor around our seats, particularly mine. Anyone familiar with the DC-3 knows the gear and flap levers are alongside the co-pilot's seat over here. And the piping for those go down through the floor, and there's a hole about like this. And flames were coming up through that. They were coming up around the rudder pedals. Any other openings there were in the floor. I got this arm severely burned getting the flaps down. I suffered burns over approximately 35 to 40% of my body, about 80% of which were second and third degree and fourth degree. I had a substantial amount of grafting done. My eyes were burned to the point of functional blindness. When I finally got off the respirator, which I was on for 7 weeks, I couldn't, all I could do was whisper. This rough, scratchy voice I've got now is because my larynx is scarred. But at that time, literally all I could do was whisper. I was in the hospital for 3 months. I went through 2 years of occupational therapy getting the use of my hands back, and I went through 5 years of litigation getting the use of my life back. And ultimately the litigation was successful from our standpoint. But to give you some idea, I was a plaintiff in 3 suits, I was a defendant in 2 suits, and I was a witness in 21 suits. So between occupational therapy, medical follow-up, and litigation, that was my life for 5 years following the accident. So I'm going to start you out with a montage of Rick. Shows some of the Ozzie and Harriet shows, or shows him performing. Then we'll take a listen to the air traffic controller report. I'll take a break there if there are any questions, and then there's just, I've got some brief footage of me going in and out of the hospital, and then I'll finish up with a little short clip of Rick on tour. If anybody has ever wondered what it's like to be on tour with a rock star, I'll show you. And I'll show you what I saw every day for 2 years. So we'll see if I can figure this thing out and get it going. I think I did something. Here we go. Everybody see it? Everybody see it already?
Thank you very much. It's a real honor to be here tonight. It really is. This is probably the first time most of you have ever seen me in color, I guess. But if you feel it's not just the same, you know, as it was, and you'd rather have the old black and white Ricky, turn the color control down on your TV a little bit, and maybe it'll be just like the old times.
I want to watch too, so.
This is how the world remembers Ricky Nelson, as the wisecracking kid brother who grew up before our eyes on television.
What's so impressive about this man, David?
Couldn't keep him down, I guess. He had all those joke lines. I was a straight man. And whenever a situation kind of dropped off, he'd come up with a funny line.
Hi! Who is this? It's my little brother, Ricky. Would you like to see me tap dance? Just don't pay any attention to him. I think he's cute. He's not. I am, too. Can you really tap dance, Ricky? Sure, I can sing, too.
His love of rock and roll music helped smuggle it into America's living rooms, making it accessible to millions of new fans.
The first record, when that sold 1 million records, I could not believe it. I couldn't believe that it would actually come over a car radio, and I'd be driving down and hear it on the radio. I mean, that was the greatest thrill, and it still is. It thrills me.
Rick's popularity spanned almost 5 decades and made him one of the best-selling recording artists of all time. Rick never abandoned his fans or his music. To the end, he was the rock and roll traveling man, playing hundreds of sold-out personal appearances a year. To learn the real story of Rick Nelson, we have to go back in time, back to simpler times, back to when the world was in black and white.
Here's to Ozzie and Harriet, starring the entire Nelson family, Ozzie, Harriet, David, and Ricky. Ozzie Nelson, of course, plays the part of Ozzie. And here is Harriet Nelson, who plays the part of Harriet. The older of the Nelson boys is David, played by David Nelson. And his younger brother, the irrepressible Ricky, played by Ricky Nelson.
Here they are, America's favorite family, the Nelsons.
I gotta find a stop. Huh. Okay. Bring up the air traffic control recording next. That reminded me, watching that, not only was Ozzie and Harriet the longest running sitcom in television history, it was the only one in which all of the principal characters were real people using their real names, showing their real house, and basing the stories on events from their real lives. And I don't think it's ever been done since. Ozzie Nelson wrote, produced, directed, and starred in every episode of the Ozzie and Harriet Show, 430 some odd episodes. So, see if I can find a menu on here and we'll keep going. This next one, the air traffic control recording is about, I think it's about 11 minutes long, something like that. Do you know where menu is on this? I'm not finding it. Ah, good, thanks. All right, and then play. This is a little bit hard for me to listen to, but I've done it more than once.
This is a continuation of the re-recording concerning communications at the Fuller Center, Texarkana Love Sector radar position on 31 December 1985.
All the communications except the Ferguson.
Victor 278 to Blue Ridge, and the Blue Ridge 9 arrival. Maintain 6000. No, that's 6 left, maintain 240. Okay, after Texarkana, the Victor 278 to Blue Ridge, and the Blue Ridge 9 arrival, maintain 6000. And that was 1 Yankee, that's on. position now, and 19 miles. That would be the nearest airport to you. Mount Pleasant is south of you, off at about 180-degree heading, and 22 miles if you want to tap Mount Pleasant. All right, Yankee, you're breaking up. Can you state your nature of the emergency? City at the moment in the conference, 1756 relay. Eagle Express 1756, thank you much. And Eagle Express 1756, ask him if he can make it to Mount Pleasant. Hello, Tower Yankee, can you make it to Mount Pleasant Airport? Express 1756, the crash site should be now 12 o'clock to you. And let me give you a distance from where I last marked it on the radar. Showing 12 miles, 12 o'clock, 12 miles. 1756. 1756, do you see the smoke? Now we see fire too. Okay, we're just about over the site, and we're going to go ahead and land, and it's, I've got the local system down here. Okay, we'll stay up there and relay anything that you may have for us. Okay? And 25 November, Eagle Express 1756, we appreciate the help. Right. Hey, 1756, okay, make sure the teleconference on their way to Texas County. Yeah, we called our company, they're calling us from Texas County for hotel. Okay, looks like a little town here, probably too bad. American 247-4. American 247 proceeding into the DFW increase to your best forward speed, please. Please pick up about 10 knots, 3-3. Have to look at a different frequency, I'll do that. November 9859 kilo, contact forward center 135.1. 35.1, kilo. American 247, a change of plan now, altitude and additional traffic, reduce your speed to 290 knots. 290 knots on the indicator. 290, American 247. And helicopter 1756, you sure that's the decal? Maybe we can have them open fire trucks out of there. Okay, 1756, yeah, here. And Eagle Express 1756, I'm unable to receive the helicopter any longer. East of my radio communication coverage. Just feel free to relay any information you've got for us. Okay, if you can, you might scramble a fire truck out of DeKalb. That seems to be the nearest town. It's still southeast corner of DeKalb. He says it's totally engulfed in flames and they're over the crash site at this time. And Eagle Express 1756, we copy that. We will do. Thank you very much.
This concludes the re-recording of the transmissions pertaining to the subject incident involving November 711 Yankee on 31 December 1985.
Little homegrown drama there. Interesting thing happened a few months ago, and I got to take a check off my bucket list. I had at one time I tried to contact that controller to talk with him some years after the accident, and the FAA, I didn't know it at the time, was shielding him. They never released his name, and they never allowed the press to talk to him. But I got to him through a back door, through someone that I was communicating with by email, and he passed on my request that this gentleman called me, and so about 2 months ago, I got to have about an hour-long conversation with that air traffic controller, and it was not only interesting but very satisfying. And as I say, it was kind of a bucket list item. Anybody have questions at this point before I follow up stuff? Yes, ma'am.
What did they succumb to? The smoke, or and what condition was the airplane in?
All right, that's two questions. I'll start with the first. Technically, we didn't crash land. We made an emergency off-airport landing and a cow pasture on the gear with the flaps down. And then after touchdown, we rolled out into a small stand of trees. We did not hit anything with the fuselage or the engines. It was just the outer wing panels peeled back as we rolled into the trees, and it actually helped stop us, which was good because about another 100 yards down the cow pasture was a house where the farmer and his wife lived, and the wife was wheelchair bound. And if we'd smacked into that house, there'd have been one more casualty on the group. Now the airplane, when we got down, other than the wings being folded back and the left wing top tip, we didn't know it at the time. We hit a phone pole as we came over the road, took the left wing tip off with the entire aileron intact in one piece. And neither Brad nor I knew we had hit anything. The airplane flew the same without that chunk of wing as it did with it. Of course, we only had a few seconds left of flying. But the airplane still looked like an airplane when I got out of it. And I got out by going head first through the co-pilot's side window. I don't know, Randy, how high are those windows? 15 feet? Something like that? Yeah. I went out head first, and as I was falling, I saw that I was going to fall on a pile of brush that had built up against a tree trunk. And all I could think of was, oh great, I survived this impossible event, and I'm going to get a twig through my eye into my brain and get killed that way. But instead, this pile of brush acted like a mattress and broke my fall. And I did a left shoulder roll and then up onto my feet. And looked back to see if anyone else was coming out my window. And no one was, but I looked back in the cabin windows and it was just all fire up. You know, when you look through the windows, what you saw was fire. And I went around the front of the airplane and around the left wing, what was left of it. Left engine was still running. I had shut mine off before I went out. I didn't want to hit that 11-foot, 6-inch diameter prop, which was going around out there. And I couldn't use my hands. They were so badly burned that I couldn't even, I had unbuckled my seatbelt to stand up and brace myself. And I couldn't buckle my seatbelt. I couldn't do anything. I shut the engine off by pushing the mag switch with the back of my right hand. Brad exited his side with his engine running, which his choice, not mine. Anyway, I went back to the cabin door, and the air stair door, always hard to open at the best of times, but in my case, my hands were so weak, so clumsy, that I was unable to open the door. But when we first landed, it still looked entirely like an airplane. I didn't know until we got the NTSB report. All of the fabric was burned off of the right elevator, and the bottom fabric was burned off the left elevator. So Brad was making the landing with 1/4 of the normal elevator surface. And he commented in his testimony on how sloppy the stick was. Well, it's pretty obvious why. Just through a set of, it's just one of those things. I was feeding flaps out as he was starting to flare. And any of you who've flown a DC-3 know that when you're at high speed, particularly as we were, put the flaps out, it pitches the nose up. And that was actually what enabled Brad to get the nose high enough to make a normal landing, was that the flaps were coming out at the same time that he was attempting to flare. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
If I remember correctly, the news reports at the time said the fire started in the passenger compartment. Is that correct?
No. They also said that Rick and the people were freebasing cocaine, which they were not.
I remember that.
In fact, in the 2 years that I flew with them, and we were on the road 3 weeks out of every month, year-round, I provided personal security for Rick and his fiancée, Helen Blair. And in all that time, I never saw anyone in that group doing hard drugs. Some of the guys smoked pot, Rick did not. He smoked cigarettes, so did Helen. No, the fire started back, the heater was located way aft in the tail cone, and there was a fuel line that ran from the right main tank down through the wing room, underneath the floor, and then up through the floor into the tail cone where the heater was. It's a 155,000 BTU Janitrol heater. We had it worked on end of the previous, excuse me, I have another drink of Coke. We had it worked on just the end of October, and they had at Duncan Aviation, Lincoln, Nebraska, and they failed to replace the heater hose, which was more than 6 years out of date. And apparently, as best they were able to determine, the hose cracked and then started spraying fuel into the belly of the airplane. Sir? 7. Rick Nelson, his fiancee Helen Blair, our young drummer Ricky Enfield, who had celebrated his 23rd birthday the night before he died. Pat Woodward, our bass player, who had a approximately 5 or 6 month old infant son waiting for him at home. Clark Russell, our sound engineer, and Bobby Neal, our lead guitarist, who was an absolute magician with a guitar and had played his first professional gig at the Grand Ole Opry when he was 12 years old. So that gives you some idea of his talent and ability. Any other questions at this point? Okay, well, I'll run a couple of more of these and then wrap it up, if that's all right. Or if you want to sit and watch the whole thing, you're welcome to. It's fine with me.
Program that the menu I think they'd standardize these things in the
This is a view of the wreckage the night of the accident, and it's a film that was taken by the local Texarkana TV station. Is that enough for everybody? It's just more of the same. So. This was taken the next day from a news helicopter, and it gives a pretty good picture of the overall crash site and what it looked like. Tail cone survived as well as the tail did. That's how we knew about the hose, because the heater survived and the coupling survived. Come on, gang. Here. Wreckage is here. damage you're seeing, with the exception of the outer wing panels, was from the fire. There was no collision damage on the airplane at all. This gives a good shot. Right wing, left wing. No, I'm sorry, other way around. Right wing, left wing. We were setting fire to fields that we overflew. We were dropping molten aluminum on a bunch of fields, and you'll see some isolated fire patches back here. Well, if I let it run long enough. Where there's just, the fire department got it out, and there's just a circle of black where something we dropped, set it on fire. Here's an independent one there. And then that's the crash site. I assume that was enough of that. Before I play this last one, anybody want to know the story of Garden Party? Is anybody curious at all about that? That actually tells a story. Rick was invited to play a rock and roll revival at Madison Square Garden. And it was in the early 1970s, and by then he had shoulder-length hair, and he was wearing, pirate shirts and stuff, and he was doing some covers of Rolling Stones songs and so on. And when he started to play a Rolling Stones song in Madison Square Garden, 22,000 people started booing him. Well, he had never been booed in his life, and it stunned him and also frightened him. But he went home, and it prompted him to write the song Garden Party, which if you listen closely to, has got all kinds of interesting lyrics. For instance, he says that Mr. Hughes is wearing Dylan's shoes and wearing a disguise, which was simply saying that Bob Dylan was there in one of his many disguises out in the audience. Another lyric is that Yoko brought her walrus. Well, Yoko is Yoko Ono, and the walrus, of course, was John Lennon. And at that point in time, he had a big floppy mustache, you may remember, that came down kind of past his chin. So that was why he was a walrus. Rick opened up a closet door, and out stepped Johnny B. Good, playing guitar like ringing a bell and looking like he should, which meant that Chuck Berry was there. So each one of these verses is actually retelling part of what happened. In the song, he says, when I sang about a song about Honky Tonk, which was Honky Tonk Woman from Rolling Stones, he said, when I sang a song about honky tonk, it was time to leave. That was when they started booing him. So he wrote that song and produced it the way he wanted, against all recommendations of the professional producers. And it sold 8 million copies on original release. So I guess he was right and they were wrong. At least that would be my bet. This last bit here, Rick on Tour. It's very short, but it will show you, as I said earlier, what it's like on the road with a rock star. And it's essentially what I saw every day when I was with Rick for 2 years. And it's every bit as exciting as it looks.
I've never known what it is to be attacked like a grown-up. I don't see myself growing up. It really doesn't happen in what I'm doing.
16 coats of dog. Train I ride. 16 coats of dog. Right on that train to my baby and gone. Train, on and round, round. Train, on and round, round. To my baby, down with me. Big hill.
Good, thank you for that.
Yeah, I don't know how to go about shutting that off or get the disc out. Okay, any other questions anybody's got? I imagine you all mostly want to get going someplace, so thanks for listening to me.
Thanks for the great picture, Grant.